Hey everybody, and welcome to the Cinefix Top 100, the silent era motion picture studio that fired us before we got a chance to watch 100 of the greatest movies of all time. I'm Clint Gage. Joining me as always, Cinefix's very own invisible swords person, Alex Stedman. How you doing?
I'm good. Hello, amigo.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm is the answer to the question that you didn't ask me. But I wanted
that was
to.
rude of me.
I'm
you're
great.
Honestly, yeah.
Thank you for asking. And of course, the singing bush, Michael Calabra. How you doing,
the
Cal?
singing bush?
You're the singing
That's
bush
a compliment.
All right. I'll take it.
You're one of the funniest parts of a really classic movie.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is. All right.
Yeah. Congratulations
Oh,
on
Randy Newman.
that. So here we are once again, and we are in season 2, the community season of the Cinefix Top 100, which, you know, thanks to Dan's algorithm getting smarter, is, I don't know, were we worried about sentience with Dan's algorithm?
I don't know if it's.
Not if it's picking the three amigos.
I think that would scare you.
Yeah.
I think I can outsmart it still.
Well, building off of the Seven Samurai, this week, of course, we got
Another masterpiece.
Ooh, Jamie. So building off the Seven Samurai, of course, we have another masterpiece dealing with the idea of community with three amigos, as evidenced by the lovely centerpiece here, which we forgot to mention. This is one thing that I'm going to get out of the way right up top. We forgot to mention last week the cool centerpiece that our producer Tayo made, which was a rad samurai sword in a
and
little holder. This week, we've got literally three amigos.
It's so
amazing.
good.
It's great. I'm taking these home with me, by the way.
We should all take one. We'll
Decide
fight.
decide later.
We can't split
Love a
up the
shootout.
amigos.
We can't split
Yeah.
up the amigos.
Oh, that's true.
I'll
That's my
take
least
them
favorite
home,
of
and then
them.
I'll mail them to you guys, and we can all take turns.
Oh.
But
You can have them on Mondays, Wednesdays, and alternating Saturdays. Alex can have them on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I could have it on Sundays.
the point is, we're going to get lawyers to hash this out for us.
Thank God.
But yes, the three amigos. Now, I think I can have. Let me get a little confession and or apology or explanation. I'm not exactly
I
sure
want
what
all
this
of the
is out of the way up front. In the conversation about this, you know, favorite versus best, kind of we have a lot. Like, this movie is very much on the favorite end of the spectrum for me. I dearly love this movie. It's like to the point where every Christmas I try to give a family member a sweater so that when they open it, we can all yell, "It's a sweater!" There's a musical theater unit that I did in high school. This would have been 96, 97, something like that, where me and another guy did the whole My Little Buttercup routine for my musical theater unit that year.
That's incredible.
Plethora was the first like big word that I learned because of this movie. Like anytime I'm trying to get anybody's attention, usually I start with look up here. Like, it's just, this movie is in my brain, and it has been since the beginning of time, as far as I can tell. So that's where I'm at with Three Amigos. Just want to clear that up.
Well, I feel like we're all going to have those, though. Like, I feel like we haven't had too many of them, but I have a Three Amigos on my list. Like, I have more than a few Three Amigos on my list.
That's the great thing about movies, is everybody has a movie
What's
like
your
that.
Three amigos?
Elf is maybe. Oh, Anchorman is probably like the closest parallel.
Anchorman, we're going to talk about at some point.
Yeah, look forward to that.
Anchorman's
Spoilers, but yeah.
Anchorman's on my list, so that means it's on there. So
Oh, wait, it's on your.
Okay, great.
Are we doing-
Well, listen, we're spoiling.
We are doing
the
too many
opening of
spoilers
the
right now,
envelope
yeah.
a little bit at the end, but I mean, where do you guys come down? Because this is going to be another one of those things where, like, you know, the movies that you respond to like this are very telling of the generation, the year you were born, basically. Like, I was 4 when I saw this movie for the first time, I think. So it's just always been with me. But what is your experience with Three Amigos?
I watched this for the first time for this.
Oh, good.
and Clint, don't you dare apologize.
You've run into a couple of those.
I have. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I like discovering things, and this, like, I couldn't believe how funny I found this movie. Like, especially with someone with no nostalgia for it. Like, I was just watching it alone, just like cracking up at certain points, and I did not expect to enjoy it that much. And I don't know if I just needed to turn my brain off for a second, but like, I don't know. This movie is real. I find it delightful. I'm so glad we're talking about it.
I watched it again by myself with some beer in my hotel room last night. And I'm like, yep,
Yeah.
Fucking great.
It's great. You can just like, and it's like, I don't know if it's one of the 100 best movies of all time by any stretch.
I can assure you it's not.
But like, I don't know. I will probably watch it again, maybe with a little marijuana. But like, I will watch it. I loved it.
Cal, what's your history with Three Amigos?
It's a dad fave for sure, right? Like, you know, my dad's like, Mike, come on down, like come downstairs. I'm like, Dad, what's up? He's like, Three Amigos is on Comedy Central. I'm like,
It's such a on Comedy Central kind of movie too.
I'm like, all right. Like, in fairness, like, I love Chevy Chase, Steve Martin, and Martin Short. I'm not the biggest fan of the Western genre, and this movie is funny, but it is not something that I would go out of my way to watch.
Not a plethora of times.
Not a plethora of times. I mean, I don't even think I've seen it a plethora of times. This may be like the fourth time I've seen it. Like, I got 2 cable viewings and watched it maybe once on DVD.
That's a fair amount of times though.
Yeah, but
to
I
watch.
stopped watching like DVDs like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Physical media is dead.
It's dead. It's over.
It's over.
I'm a dead men don't wear plaid kind of guy.
Are you really?
Yeah, I love that movie.
Okay. All right. Well, just speaking of Dead Men Don't Wear a Plaid, let's get straight into the pedigree of this and some of the folks that worked on it. So, I mean, it's 1986, directed by John Landis, written by Lorne Michaels, Steve Martin, and Randy Newman. Which is it's the only writing credit of his entire career, as far as I can tell.
As a screenwriter.
It's so
He
random.
has written things.
He's written a handful of other things,
That you
songs I
might have
believe
heard
they're
of.
called.
Yeah.
I believe he's got a friend in me. But no, Randy, this is his only screenwriting credit of his entire career. And like there is Martin Short and Steve Martin were on Conan O'Brien's podcast recently. I think they were talking about their Only Murders in the Building, but they talked about Randy Newman wrote the his favorite line. He wrote the "It's a Sweater" line, which is Steve Martin's favorite line.
It's a really good line.
The entire movie was Randy Newman's line. So it wasn't just the lyrics to the song that somehow snuck his way into getting the because he wrote the couple of songs that are in there too. But as the movie was in development for a little while, I mean, it was long enough to go through this like who's who of comedy names in the 70s and 80s, like Belushi and Aykroyd and Bill Murray. Like at one point or another, they were all almost amigos.
Yeah, if you became famous through SNL or Second City in the late 70s or early 80s, you were probably attached to this
Candy
movie.
was in that. John Candy was almost
Couldn't ride a horse.
He was
though.
too big for a
Which
horse.
is so sad.
I know. But he was the one that recommended Martin Short though, because of their SCTV history together, which is great.
Eugene
Martin
Levy
Short
probably would not have worked as an amigo.
probably not. he would have because he's hilarious. But
Didn't Martin Short get SNL out of this?
Did he?
I think I remember that. Could be very wrong.
he went straight from this to like Inner Space.
Yeah.
So like he was doing. He was big enough on his own to get other work.
Yeah, true.
I think this was past the SNL.
Oh, you might be right. Yeah.
But he was an SCTV guy.
Yeah.
That's where the what's his name with the hair. The guy that had the character that was just like the hair was pointing like straight up.
Oh, yeah.
What was his name? I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, but that's getting weirdly ahead of ourselves. Steve Martin, like at this point, Ed Grimley, yes, was that guy's name. Thank you, Slack. Steve Martin was the dude. It's easy to forget that he was like selling out stadiums as a stand-up.
Yeah.
In the 70s. Like he was enormous before he was on Saturday Night Live, and like he was his comedy records were huge.
He made some really funny movies.
The Jerk.
Yeah.
I do like The Jerk.
The Jerk in 79.
Yeah.
He had the early mid 80s, I think prior to Three Amigos, were kind of, I mean, that's where the Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid lives.
I still don't. I just like that movie because I just don't understand who thought that was a great idea.
Yeah. So this is a movie where he used footage from film noir movies and cut himself into it and like rewrote a script so that like
How have I not seen that one?
He's talking to other.
That sounds hilarious.
So like he plays a detective, and there's like an on-running bit in it, right, where he gets all of the scenes where Humphrey Bogart is on a phone in like the 40s and like the Big Sleep and stuff like that, and the way he he just writes the other side of the conversation, and he just like writes Humphrey Bogart as this like drunk. Like incompetent, and he's just like trying to talk to him and just be like, I thought I told you to do you know whatever, and it's just like in the 1980s where people didn't have access to the internet or any of that stuff. The fact that he's just like, I'm going to recut these obscure film noirs into a comedy for mass release is just like, that's like, I'm at the top of my game.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I can literally do anything I want because this is the most niche of niche ideas.
It was him and Rob Reiner being like, it'd be funny.
Yeah.
And then they made that movie.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Is this your favorite Steve Martin movie?
It's certainly my favorite era of Steve Martin. I think it's the high point of his career. I would say, because like 86, 87, you've got Three Amigos, you got Little Shop of Horrors. And then in 87, you have Roxanne, which I love, which is a Cyrano de Bergerac. Have you ever seen it? It's firefighter with a long nose, and it's wonderful. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels were all in 1987.
That's a hell of a streak.
Hell of a year. So like I don't think that there's any shame in not topping that since, or frankly, even I think in recent years he's done plenty of funny things, because Parenthood was great, and like I love Steve Martin. He's awesome.
What about My Blue Heaven? Come on,
My Blue Heaven,
the comedic sequel to Goodfellas.
I love that they wrote the writers who were married,
Nora Ephron
and
why am I blanking on
Pileggi?
Yeah, Nicholas Pileggi.
Yeah,
they were husband and wife at the time.
They wrote My Blue Heaven and Goodfellas based on the same source material.
Based on Pileggi's conversations with the real Henry Hill.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
You dirty brat.
But I would argue that this stretch for Steve Martin is the high watermark of his career.
I mean, if you look at stretches for actors, like it's got to be up there.
Yeah. And then Martin Short. We talked a little bit about Martin Short. Like he came out of SCTV. Interspace which is Joe Dante. I loved Interspace too. When I was this is my like formative comedy. Years of comedy, and it was. But like I honestly might prefer Martin Short. Like I love the like sweet innocent kind of thing that he does in this movie, but I honestly think I prefer like the sleazier Martin Short. When he goes like think about like Mars Attacks, and even in Inherent Vice.
He's good.
Do you remember when he was Uncle Jack in Arrested Development?
Yes.
Yeah. Like that. It's such a bizarre character. Yeah. And like when he goes a little bit sleazy, I think he's really very memorable. But
he can do both though.
Yeah.
He's really good as like the sweet, innocent little dude. And that's
like the story that he tells in this, where he's like, Dorothy Gish said that
the Dorothy.
You have got it.
And the kids are just like looking at him like
so good. But anyway, the Steve Martin and Martin Short, the fact that they're still friends all these years later and still doing legit really good work. Only Murders in the Building is awesome.
I still haven't watched it.
Oh, it's so,
but I know it's like the thing that you need to watch.
I think. Right I mean, you'll enjoy it now too. Like having seen Three Amigos, but and then there's Chevy Chase, which like turns out he's an asshole and nobody likes him now. Is the word on Chevy Chase?
Yeah.
But like he was the only guy that got to say his name every week on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was the first Weekend Update desk, and he got to say, "I'm Chevy Chase," and that's news to me. I think was the.
As Chevy, do you outside of Clark Griswold, is there a lot of Chevy Chase movies that resonate with you?
Not as much, I don't think. Not as much as the other guys.
No, definitely not. Right? Like,
well, the weird thing is, I think this is maybe like one of my more liked roles of his, like, because he always plays like the smug kind of jerk a lot of the time, but like him playing like the lovable idiot, I don't know. Like,
but, I mean, you take Caddyshack for example. Yeah. Like, I'll take Bill Murray and Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack before I talk about Chevy Chase.
No.
For sure.
You know. And then, but I mean, the vacation movies and Caddyshack and Fletch was pretty good.
Fletch is like at least in my mind, in like the Three Amigos round. It's like, hey, Mike, Fletch is on Comedy Central.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing wrong with those kind of movies, though.
Three Amigos, in terms of like Chevy Chaseness, like Three Amigos has the right dose of Chevy.
Yeah.
And he's like counteractive because he's so dumb.
Right.
So dumb, and you can like, you know, anything he says, you know, like they establish how dumb he is real fast. And anything he says in the movie, you're like, oh, it's because he's dumb. And doing that with Chevy Chase, like that works great for him, I think. I mean, every other time where he's like really smug or put upon or something like that, I'm not as into it.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, I like this Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Flugelman says you're not to come back on this lot. Ever.
And I guess the other guy that we can talk about is John Landis, the director, who, I mean, like the 80s for John Landis were a trip.
Or late 70s.
So late 70s into the early 80s. So like we're just rattling off the titles that he directed, starting in Animal House of 79.
Yep.
Animal House, Blues Brothers, An American Werewolf in London, Trading Places, Three Amigos, Coming to America. Like, incredible run. Right in the middle of that, mixed in the Twilight Zone movie, which was famously a helicopter stunt goes bad, 3 people die. And that was just right smack in the middle of this run of movies for him. And I don't even know. And there was even like the Coming to America, like he got sued over as well, because there was a guy that sued the studio because they stole the script, or he sued, I think it was Paramount. But Paramount, they bought a spec script that was like the same years earlier, and then they made Coming to America. And so there was this run of, between the Twilight Zone incident and like the trial that ensued over that, which was gnarly.
And the 90s also weren't kind to John Landis.
No, but like the work, I mean, that string of movies, like you can put that up against anybody's. Like that's a hell of a 10-year run from Animal House all the way through Coming to America. Like
Tanner would be remiss if we also didn't talk about the Thriller music video.
The Thriller music video, right?
Yeah,
Tanner, our colleague, needs us to point out that he directed the Thriller music video. But so anyway, I mean, Landis and there's some other. I read a story too about Chevy Chase and John Landis getting into a fight on this.
Well, of course they did. Everyone fought with Chevy Chase.
Yeah, but like Chevy Chase was talking about John Landis not being safe enough on like a live mic. And Landis heard it, and this was there. And like,
but that's so dark when you think about.
And apparently they got into a big fight about it. So like, I don't know. I mean, Landis, the work that he did in the 80s is like nearly unimpeachable, right? I mean, American Werewolf in London is probably the one that you still talk about, right? Just specifically for the practical effects of it all. Like,
I mean, I still talk about Blues Brothers. Maybe that's the Chicagoan in me, but
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
I think so. I don't know, either that
it's
or
the car chase though.
Yeah, it's
right.
Car chase. Either that or the car chase enthusiast in you, probably, which I can't argue with that. So anyway, John Landis had a tough go there in the 80s.
I don't even know how you make movies while going through all that. Like, that's just so dark.
He wasn't around for post on videos because of the I might be blowing a torf here, but he wasn't around for post because of the trial that came after the Twilight Zone accident.
Also it was like the 80s. I guess like they didn't pay as much. Like actors were regularly making like 3 movies a year. When you turn out more stuff, like, you'll have a couple of duds, but you'll probably have more classics in the end too.
Yeah. And then occasionally you'll have a year where you make Roxanne, Planes, Trains, Automobiles, and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
That's an insane year. I don't think I've ever put that together.
I think the only thing that eclipses that is like Jim Carrey's 1994. Which is Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, and Ace Ventura.
Dear Lord.
That all happened in one year.
In a single year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think. You're right. I don't think that trumps Jim Carrey's, but I mean, we can get into the brilliant moments here. This now, any particular moment you want to highlight in general, because I have such a hard time talking about this movie objectively, because I think every square inch of this film is hilarious.
I'm trying to think of the first time I really bust out laughing.
The intro.
I had
that note.
That's
Like that's how you know that just like everybody is like bringing their A game here, because
they hold it for like 15 seconds.
Yeah, and then they cut it at the same time. So whenever like the first person started to give, everybody was in tune on it to just be like, and we're gonna wrap it, and they wrap it in the shot too, right? It's not like they cut it. It's not like they cut for the wrap of the sound of the note.
That high note that they just sustain for forever. But
it tells you what to expect, because I didn't fully know what to expect, and it's like, oh, okay, this is
funny because you're going into a Western comedy with these 3 guys, and it opens on them singing straight to cam, basically. Like they're just singing this weird with
they're in these outfits,
goofy outfits. You're like, wait a minute, and then they hang on to that note for a minute. I don't know. I don't know if it's officially a minute, but it is long.
It might be a minute.
And then and then it starts. And by the way, let's talk about the music right off the bat, because it's Elmer Bernstein, and this score is legit as they come.
Yeah.
I think this is an incredible piece of music throughout the entire movie. Like, it's this big sweeping thing. And it lands the comedy more. Like, and we can talk about this more in depth a little bit later, but like about whether or not this movie qualifies as a spoof or as like, because I think in some ways it does, but like it's one of my rules about good spoofs is like, you have to be able to mistake it for the genre that it's spoofing, right? Like Hot Fuzz, great action movie that spoofs action movies, right? So like the fact that there's a big sweeping Western score underneath this movie, like, makes it funnier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
like,
don't know if this is a spoof though.
I think it kind of fits in because it has like big Western moments. Like it has the moments where they're facing off against the like El Guapos guys, kind of.
It's certainly not in like the Naked Gun Airplane, like Abrams Zucker school of spoofery where it's just like joke a minute goofiness, you know, but like there is something about like it's at minimum a loving homage to Western movies and to what we talked about last week, Seven Samurai.
When
like
you say it's lampooning it
with John Landis, yes,
yeah.
I believe he was nationally lampooning it.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of ways to start the movie, that sustained high note is a hell of a way to go. But then the movie, the silent film that we get to watch right up front. And this is another one of my favorite things is like doing bad on purpose as a joke is one of my favorite things to see. Like the way that it's the lasso trick where he lassos people and then he's like pulling them up, the bandits.
Also just like the commentary on old media. I mean, like, you know, to bring it back to Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, it's just like, hey, look at this obscure piece of media that we're going to be lampooning here.
Yeah.
You know, just like so you get the like historical pedigree of what we're going for.
Right. You establish like what not just who they are and like how they're seen by what's her name? Carmen.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Everyone takes it so seriously in this. They're all like rhapsodized by it.
I think meeting Carmen first and seeing her like watch the movie before we meet, like if you just swap those scenes, because the next scene that you get is actually at the studio,
them getting fired,
and it's them getting fired. You know, Harry Flugelman kicking them off the lot. If you just seen that, if they'd have cut that scene, then cut to Carmen seeing the movie and being like, oh, they're the ones to save us, I don't think the movie works at all.
Yeah. No.
Like, it makes Carmen seem dumb. Like instead, now we get to see the movie first and see Carmen's reaction to the film first. Then it's like, oh, this is how everybody treats film. You know, like they don't quite understand what's going on, and it's enough to kind of sell. But like, had we met the Amigos first and seen them get fired in the way that they got fired, like the no dough, no show stuff, like if we'd have seen that first, and that's the people that. Like now, all of a sudden, we're worried about Carmen again. We're like, Carmen doesn't know what she's getting into, and like that's a different relationship that we now get to have with Carmen than had we met the Amigos first.
Well, that's another thing I like about it too, because I don't think the movie makes Carmen look dumb.
No,
there's the moment where they all kind of discover, like later in the movie, that they're not for real, that they're actors, and then she feels dumb, I'm sure, but it's like it's not really her fault. Like
no.
They're always the butt of the joke. Yeah, like them and El Guapo are the only butt of the jokes.
I mean, at minimum, they out dumb the villagers for sure, but like it's just so they show up so cluelessly like that. But no, I think that's the point of showing that film right up front is and seeing the audience react to it and be impressed by it, and like they're at that point it becomes like I said, I mean at that point like I'm not worried about Carmen, like oh no.
Oh, you poor woman. But I like the scene right after that too, where she's like writing I don't know if it's before we see the Flugelman scene, but she's like writing the note and they're cutting it so it's cheaper.
The 10 peso version.
Yeah. And I don't know if I don't want to read too much into it, but I wonder if that's like some kind of commentary on like what's lost in the edit, you know? Because like you just edit something over and over, too many cooks in the kitchen, and then it's indecipherable.
But it's also like there's a breadcrumbs thing happening there. that sort of justifies the rest of the movie, right? Like we need to see her be enthralled by the movie. Then we need to see the honest mistake that happens in the translation of the telegram. Then we need to see them get fired. And like the setup to like make sure that this situation makes logical sense is like, it's all there. And
well, it does make sense too when they read it. It's like, oh yeah, that does kind of sound like a show.
And then you stop it, like so after they get fired, they're out on the street in their underwear and they're like, something always comes up. And then the guy shows up with the telegram immediately. Like that's absurd and hilarious, but it makes sense because of all of these other breadcrumbs. Like I don't pull on that thread when I think it was like, oh, he shows up just like right at that moment. Like that's not a thing that I'm worried about when I'm watching it because like all of the rest of it, the buildup makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I do want to talk about the Flugelman scene too, because I don't think it's like the funniest scene in the movie, but he has a line in it where he's like, "We messed with the formula, and now we aren't making any money," and it's like, "Oh, that hurts in 2023."
Right.
That is a real.
I love the Cochise picture that they're going to shoot in 8 days.
Like we got to do it.
Nobody cares about 3 Spanish landowners on a weekend in Manhattan. Those darn amigos.
I would watch it.
You very much would. I saw an interview with it was what passed for junkets in '86, I think, but it was just a quick interview with the three of them sitting there talking about the movie. And Steve Martin was like, "I'd love to do Amigos too." Like now that we know who they are, and we don't have to worry about exposition, like we could just dive right into an Amigos too.
I would listen. I'm the biggest proponent of a good mid-budget comedy. I feel like that would be a perfect mid-budget comedy.
I mean, how would they do it now? They would do like they would get Channing Tatum and a younger cast of Amigos.
Wait, that would be good.
They would Ghostbusters the Amigos. Ugh, I don't need that. I think that ship has sailed. So what else?
We have to talk about the infamous line because I feel like that's another like moment where I actually like laughed for one of the first times.
Infamous?
That means he's beyond famous or whatever they say.
Wow.
But it again, it kind of like says to you like these guys are beyond stupid. Yeah. Like they're real dumb.
Right. That's why it's a hard movie for me to talk about because every single line in this movie I know by heart and I can giggle at and I love it.
But I'm still giggling at it. I just watched it for the first time. So it's not just you being nostalgic for it. I don't know. Maybe it's just my sense of humor. I just kept laughing at it.
Phil Hartman in that scene, by the way.
Yeah.
Take the Amigos' clothes.
Then just immediately undress them.
Yeah. Great.
Sam! Get wardrobe over here right away. Take the Amigos' clothes.
Wait a minute. You can't take our clothes. You gave us these clothes. They were presents.
I feel like the next big moment is like the bird call, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, so I think that this is a movie that's built on a couple of different styles of comedy, I think, because there are the individual bits that are really funny. And this scene is one of them, right? This scene is one that it's the guys are waiting for Lucky Day to, which by the way, we haven't even talked about their names yet. Lucky Day, Dusty Bottoms, and Ned Niederlander. Like how perfect are those names?
Dusty Bottoms.
But so they're waiting on Lucky to give them the signal to climb in when they're trying to steal their costumes back. And it's a wonderful little self-contained sketch. Like doesn't matter what just happened, doesn't matter what's going to happen next. It's just like, here's a goofy thing that, hey, you know, it'd be funny. I'll get up on the wall and I'll do this. And that's a funny thing that happens in a vacuum. And then there are other, which we can get to this scene later. The My Little Buttercup scene is a joke that's built by like 3 consecutive scenes. Like they'll slow play some jokes and they'll pay off things that they started 2 scenes ago, or they'll do goofy stuff in the moment that's completely out of context. But
also, I feel like I would watch if the bird call scene went on for 5 minutes, I would have been fine with it.
There's probably a version of that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I wonder if that exists.
Release the 5-minute bird call cut. Yeah.
No, but you're right. Like too, and again, like not to repeat myself, but it just keeps telling you how stupid they are because because Martin Short and Chevy Chase are just oblivious.
Yeah, they're just sitting there quietly listening. And you know what the best part about that scene to me is, and it's one that I remembered last night watching it again, is it's quiet. Except for Steve Martin's hilarious bird calls. And then at the end, when he's like, hey, guys. And then the score kicks back in, the score is like a dun as they look up. Like it's just that little subtle bit of like, no, bring the music back here.
Yeah.
Here's the sting where you're like, all right, we're ready. It's so funny how they brought it back in, 2 minutes later. Cal, so as the guy that didn't want to watch this with his dad on Comedy Central.
It's not that I didn't want to watch it. I watched it.
And then I didn't enjoy it.
I said what I said.
I wouldn't go as far as to say I didn't enjoy it. It's just that, like, I don't know. It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite Steve Martin performance. It's not my favorite Chevy Chase performance. It's not my favorite John Landis movie. Like,
You can like several things,
Well,
though.
but what I was going to ask
but-
though is like what moments in this movie actually do stand out?
So what does stand out is I look at moments like this from this movie as individual moments that are individual moments that don't necessarily lead to a sum is greater than the parts of the whole kind of thing for me, right? Because like the My Little Buttercup scene is incredible, right?
Yes.
It's undeniably funny. You can't not laugh at that scene, and I like that. But again, you also like. I watched this like a lot when I was younger, and I have softened toward Westerns in recent years. But at that time, oof, it was.
Well, to your point, Cal, I don't entirely disagree. As much as I enjoyed watching the movie, I think it kind of started to lose me around the, like, when they're infiltrating El Guapo's party.
Yeah.
I think as a whole, it's borderline a little confused because you get to a point where it gets really, really, really absurd, where like there's talking animals and the
You're
invisible
talking
swordsman.
about the Good
Yeah,
Night
that-
Ned.
Which, by the way, I'm still on board for that. Like, I don't know if everyone loved that, but I was like, this is for me. But like, then it like. So it commits to the absurdity and continues with the singing bush and the invisible swordsman. And then I feel like it kind of like gets too grounded for how absurd it got when they and that's kind of where it started to lose me.
It overcorrects.
It overcorrects, yeah. And I feel like if there's like a comedic lull, like a time where I'm not like laughing out loud, it's during that kind of like stretch where they're like trying to save Carmen and stuff. Like they try too hard to go full Western there. That's my biggest issue. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and to your point, right? Like there's to compare it to Anchorman, right? There's the scene in Anchorman where Anchorman goes too far and then they don't ever like try and walk it back, right? Which is like the like West Side Story gang fight of like the news team. And it just goes nuts and it's just like Brick killed the guy.
You need to lay low for a while.
you might need to you need to lay low for a while.
I can't wait for the Anchorman episode.
Yeah. And it's just like that to me is just like so funny. And then it like continues on, right? Because they're still trying to like do that.
Yeah, and by the end, the dog is like talking to a bear.
Yeah.
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 That's the thing. You gotta gotta commit. Like, are you gonna do it or are you gonna not?
Yeah.
Like,
Whereas Three Amigos, it's just like, okay, that was like really funny, but now we kind of need to bring it back to reality for a second. And I don't necessarily know how much that works. And again, it's nothing about this movie is bad. It's just not in any way I would consider a top 100.
I think
Even
I
on
think
the
there's
favorite versus best.
There's two
scale.
counterpoints. I think number one, like the idea that they could pull any of this off is absurd, right? The idea that and so like spending a chunk of the middle of the movie with a singing bush and an invisible swordsman and the turtle saying good night, Ned, like that was such a choice. Like they had to build a turtle puppet and like like they didn't just
and the
decide,
horses too. Oh wait, and my favorite part was the owl.
yeah, like that is a sequence around a campfire where animals are singing in harmony with the act, and like that is not a thing that like accidentally like the tones skewed a little absurd in the middle. Is like that was a hardcore choice to go that way, and so like in the spending a chunk of time in the middle being like that silly, like I think there's a version of this where that's the reason that we believe they can win this at all, like that they can pull this off.
They can make horses sing,
because the fact, the world we live in is like they are just like they're in a like himbo bubbles kind of like they're just breezily going through this, and animals are they're Disney princesses at this point, because there's like the animals are singing along with them. So like the fact that we go there actually justifies them being able, Ned Nederlander being able to win a duel with this German guy, and like there's a version of it that there. Now the other counterpoint I will say is that they were just doing whatever was funny in whatever given moment.
Yeah.
Like and the fact that we are talking about it in this detail, like they never did at all. And they're like, oh no, that's interesting. You think that? I thought it was just kind of funny to, my eyes went wide before I pulled the thing, and like that was the funny part of that, but.
I mean, there's literally an invisible swordsman.
Yes.
And that's my thing.
We were supposed to fire up. We both fired up.
Womp.
So good.
But like, that's my thing. I was like, I was almost a little confused because I was like, is this supposed to be in kind of this different, like absurd world, like a himbo bubble that we're all supposed to be living in? And I'm still not sure after all that. Like, I don't know. It seems a little confused to me.
Okay.
I don't know, man. I still think that this like lives in the shadow of Blazing Saddles. Like,
I mean, a lot of things do.
Yeah, but like, I guess like what I'm trying to say is that also is a Western comedy that like goes to 11 on like absurdity and jokes. And like, I mean, like you want to talk about breaking like the fourth wall and that, like they literally like crash like the musical set and stuff like that. And it's just like that never takes a moment to level itself off narratively. And that also is about a town that is under duress from a bunch of bandits that needs to be saved by a couple of idiots.
Oh, it's all Seven Samurai, right? Like it's, it's a funny version of that trope for sure. And like, I will agree with you there on like the escalation part of it. Like it gets to its weirdest in the middle.
Which is an odd choice.
Yeah, which is kind of a strange thing.
Yeah.
But man, it's so good.
It's so funny. Well, like, and that's why
that middle stretch is just so like let's talk about the fact that camping scene starts with with Ned asking, "How far do you think we rode before we had to go back and ask for directions?" Like that's the kind of thing that makes me feel like this is a little bit of a spoof because it's like that's pointing on it's putting your finger on that trope of just like, hey, we've decided to be heroes, here we go, and they just sprint away from town. And then traditionally, like the next cut is them at the campfire talking about the plan or whatever, but then they go to the cut and they're like, no, we didn't ask it, we have no idea where we're going, we had to go back and ask for directions.
But they're like earnestly eating bats.
And they're eating bats, and then those directions include a singing bush and an invisible swordsman. It's so, the fact that they are on this adventure is so absurd on the merits by itself that why not, and it's just like, but that is maybe that is the mistake that it made, was like peaking the absurdity in the middle instead of at the end.
Yeah, I think like my version I think if they'd continued to commit, like, I don't know, maybe the singing horses would have joined them in battle at the end of it.
Yeah, maybe they would have been in Amigos clothes or something.
Yeah,
I don't know where it goes.
The escalation, yeah. The turtle would have come up and like done some speech or something.
I do love also, speaking of absurd little bits of humor in this, the tableau that when we first meet El Guapo, the photography, like that Arabian Nights kind of.
I almost forgot about that. I did laugh at that.
It's like he's just sitting there saying like, yeah, no, we'll go back tomorrow, we'll kill him. And then he looks at the picture and it's just everybody's like posed just for, and he's like, perfect. And then he snaps the picture. I
think that's another thing I like. I like El Guapo, like the fact that he's just like not just evil villain, but he's like kind of chill sometimes.
He's a great comedy villain.
Yeah, he is.
He's a great villain for a comedy.
A good like vaudeville.
Alfonso Arau is like, have you seen Romancing the Stone?
Yeah.
And like him showing up in Romancing the Stone and Joan Wilder, this is the woman whose books I read to you on Sundays. Like he's so big and charming and goofy, and like putting that in the villain role of this movie. And like also like, he's a director too that did like Water for Chocolate and Walk in the Club. Like he made a couple of like these big sweeping romantic films in Mexico. He's a supremely talented guy. And then he's also El Guapo in Three Amigos, and he's so good at it. Yeah, he's an incredible actor. Like I'm a big fan of that.
And you believe that he is someone who would call himself the handsome.
The handsome, yeah. And his right hand man Jefe is just, I don't know. I mean, it's all bordering on perfect for me.
Well, like, and the thing is, like, and
wait a second, he was also in the Wild Bunch.
Oh.
Yeah,
and El Topo.
Mm-hmm.
Sick.
Yeah, he's Alfonso Arau. He's an interesting cat.
Oh, I guess so.
Tomorrow, I will take 50 men with me. Find these three gringos, open their stomachs, grab their intestines, and squeeze the shit out of them.
Everything I've written down for notes is kind of to your point, Cal. Like, it's all moments. It's all just like, this was a really funny moment. This really was a really funny moment. Like the Buttercup scene.
Yeah.
That scene is hilarious.
But it's actually like 3 scenes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't end with the Buttercup scene, right? Like the payoff, the rest of the payoff of that is when the 2 Germans walk in behind them and they immediately gun down everybody in there. Because the 2 Germans walk in, everybody. So the first German walks in. He's like, "I've got some friends showing up. I should hope that you'll be nicer to them than this." And then amigos walk in, and everybody's terrified of them, and they sing "My Little Buttercup" while an entire room full of tough guys are scared out of their wits.
And it's
then
so
the 2
chilling.
Yeah.
Because like I think I said this too before we started shooting. It's like Joker kind of like villainy.
Yeah.
It's like these like you're terrified these guys are gonna kill you, and they're just like singing and dancing and smiling in front of you. Like,
and then the 2 Germans walk in and say, "Hey, look at the 2 little sissies," and then they just gun down like half a dozen dudes. Like that's the end of the joke, and that's 4 scenes worth of one big joke, which is like that's hard to do. It's hard to pull off.
fair enough. I can't argue with that.
I know.
I'm right.
Yeah.
You got
and then
4,
of course
you justified 4 scenes there.
I'm working on it. And then the scene immediately after that is about the mail plane.
Oh my god.
One of the all-time great
That
jokes.
was I laughed so hard at that joke.
What I think is what is wonderful about that joke is it's such a dumb joke.
It's so
It's
stupid.
such a bad joke. It's what kind of plane is that? Well, I think it's a mail plane. Didn't you see its tiny little balls? And which on the merits, that's a dumb joke. Right. But then the way that Martin Short is so excited to tell it, and then he starts laughing, he can't hold it back because it's so funny. And then Lucky, you can see him like, wait, no, okay, this is funny. Hang on, I'm going to get it. And then you see him get it. And then Dusty never gets it, but then just starts choking. And so like, it's one bad joke that explains all 3 of them. Like, like that's a character-based bad joke, which I think is wonderful.
It's my second favorite line of the entire movie.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to get to my first favorite line. No, but it's a great moment. Like, and you have enough build up too, because it comes right after, I think right after the whole Buttercup scene. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you're like kind of on board with, at least I was laughing. And
it's another in this chain of events that justifies that some of this is even possible.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, that's the thing about Anchorman, to keep using that as a sort of counterpoint to this is like, this is a world. Anchorman is a world that does not exist, right? The 3 Amigos is keeping one foot in possible, right?
Yeah.
Which is maybe its biggest
fault.
problem, right? Yeah. But it's I think it does it skillfully enough that the whole movie still really works.
I still laughed the whole time.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I didn't laugh. I thought it was funny. It's just,
I love it.
It's just that
this episode is all about all 3 of us are like making an excuse for 3 Amigos somehow. I'm like, listen, I'm sorry, I love it so much, and you're like, I'm sorry, I don't love it.
Yeah.
There's
I'm sorry, I
there's
like
more
it,
than
but-
100 movies that I like more than this.
Okay,
one.
just take it easy. We'll get there.
Easy boy.
How about the moment where Hefe shoots Lucky?
Oh, and that's another
they all
weird
start
thing
crying.
about this world. He apparently doesn't feel pain because
He did eventually.
Well,
yeah.
it's not until he like saw the blood on his hand, but it was really funny because it was like he was scolding a child.
Yeah.
He's just like, like holding his bloody
You're in
hand
a
up.
lot of trouble, mister. And then they all start crying.
Oh my god, and the crying.
I've been shot already.
Yeah, and they cry so sillily.
What else we got? What do we need to talk about in terms of like what works about this movie?
I really do like the party scene. It's in between, like it's when the first hench guys come to attack, but before El Guapo. There's this really great scene where Chevy is playing the guitar and not saying words, but kind of just like screaming at notes. Yeah. And it's like, that made me laugh. But this is a good time to get to my favorite line of the entire movie.
Yep.
It's when he's talking to this woman and she's like trying to get him to like kiss her. And he's like, and he's being an idiot. And he's like, oh, I kiss women all the time. And she goes, we could kiss on the veranda. And he goes, oh, on the lips would be fine.
Yeah.
It's so sweet and so stupid and so genuine. But like to your point about the buildup, like it builds up to that point where you feel like, yeah, like he's just a sweet idiot.
Yeah. And there's a couple of lines, there's a couple of bits of back and forth ahead of that too. That, like by the time he gets there, it's just like, you
You
but like,
guy.
because it's, she's so clearly asking to hook up and he's just like not getting it. And he's like, oh, would you like to kiss me? He's like, oh yeah. And then just goes back to playing guitar. It's like, would you like to kiss me right now? It's like, oh, are you here? It's like, well, you can take a walk. You can kiss me on the veranda. It's like, yeah, lips would be fine. It's so good.
And
that's
it
the
just
same
comes
scene.
out so casually too. Like, oh, lips. Yeah.
That's the same scene as Martin Short doing that Dorothy Gish story, and all the kids are just their interactions with the villagers is really hilarious to me too, because there's the scene where they're eating at first. And Chevy Chase goes, "Do you have anything besides Mexican food?"
And he's so genuine though. It's like, oh, buddy.
There's another great thing in the recent episode of Conan O'Brien's podcast that Steve Martin and Martin Short were on. They talk about this scene too, where one of Steve Martin's favorite lines was, "I'm sorry, we're not Mexican. We're from out of town." Just, I don't know, the fish out of waterness that they pull off in the movie without, they're just so dumb and they just so thoroughly don't get it. Like until the midpoint when it's drawing a line in the sand and let's be amigos for real, and then they start to kind of understand. When it goes off the rails there for that, 3 or 4 scenes. But
one of the other scenes that was good too, from like a comedic perspective, is when they're walking in the desert and they're thirsty, and like they're just like. Then Chevy Chase takes like his out. He's like swooshing it around, spitting it out.
He's got the lip balm.
The lip balm is so good.
Lip balm. Yeah, they're just sitting there staring like.
Martin Short actually dumped sand in his mouth. It's one of these movies there's so many funny and memorable moments that it's like I said, I mean, I could just do a table read of this movie about all of the funny things in it, because every square inch of this movie to me is hilarious. It's funny. And like it's weird too that I'm glad to see that you watched it right now and thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Because there's always a part of me that like, movies from the 80s or whatever, or movies from my childhood are funny because they're of their time and they're not still technically funny, but I just love them anyway for nostalgia. But knowing that it is that you actually still found it funny.
I found it hilarious.
Okay.
Like, I'm not kidding.
Yeah. I mean, and I think too, like there's something to sort of the earnest stupidity of them that makes it hold up, because you can't, there's a scene too where there, first of all, 2 things. One weird thing, and I'll get back to my point, but what the hell's going on? Are there gringos falling from the sky? And then Martin Short falls down and goes, yes, El Guapo. Like, that's so funny. But then like when they've got Steve Martin, before they go and tie him up, or chain him up, and he's like, I have 3 demands. And like, 1, stop terrorizing Santapoco. And 2, and then he starts rattling off a system of democratic government that he's asking El Guapo to.
Well, and then he continues
enact.
it too.
And
like,
he keeps going. He's like, no, you don't understand. Like, you have to vote for your representatives. Like all of this stuff. Like, there's such an earnest stupidity to them that like, there's nothing white savior about that. There's nothing like, in fact, it's making fun of it. Like it's this, look at this idiot, like trying to talk about democracy while he's, and so I think that's one of the reasons why it holds up. Like there's nothing, cause they're all so stupid.
Well, and that's, I think this movie could very well not hold up. It could very well like be offensive here in the year 2023, but it is because they are always the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
Like whenever I'm like, it's like, no. They're making a joke out of these guys. Until like the earnestness, I think one of the reasons it works for me is they're just so good natured. Like the movie is good natured. And like some like my favorite scenes is when they're all just like cuddled in bed together, the 3 of them. And they're like, what are you going to do with your money? I'm going to get a car, a house. Maybe I'll like donate it to children or something. And they're like, oh yeah, I was going to do that.
I'm at the car after the kids thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but like they're like genuinely friends, and they never really like fight.
That is one of the things that's interesting about the movie is they never fight with each other.
Which you think would be an obvious conflict that they would fit in there.
You're right.
They never do.
No, and there's no time. I mean, it's an hour 40. There's no real time for that, and that's such a tangent to do, and there's no reason. that makes time. You got to spend time up front to where you got to establish that maybe Dusty is a little mad that Lucky got them fired or something. Like you could have built it in easy enough, but it needs 10 more minutes of screen time. But like, do you need that? Does that make the movie better? Or, is that even what we're doing here with this movie? But
I don't think you wouldn't need it.
Not, yeah.
I have to say the shooting of the invisible swordsman, I think is maybe my third favorite moment in the movie. Just
all of the secret chants.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The secret.
Well, also when I was writing down, like I said, I just wrote down a lot of lines that made me laugh, and one of them is just "Gwah," because that's the noise that the invisible swordman makes when he shoots him. It's such a good audible comedy moment. Just
it's such a funny little bit of practical effects too, having the outline in the sand. But yeah, all of those passwords and then we both fired. It's like living with a 6-year-old. I mean, we talked a little bit about too how this owes Seven Samurai and Western tropes a lot. Tropic Thunder was a remake of this movie.
Yeah,
more or less.
I mean,
actors accidentally stumbling into war
conflict.
Yeah. And there's a version where like Harry Flugelman comes back in the middle and it serves the same function as Tom Cruise in Tropic Thunder.
Man,
like
just rethinking of Tom Cruise as a Harry Flugelman is just, again, a better performance and a better re-envisioning.
Than Joe Mantegna?
Yeah.
It's a big
Fat Tony.
Well, to be fair to Joe, he doesn't get what Tom Cruise gets.
Tom Cruise had 2 scenes.
That's more than Joe
Big
got.
scenes.
Yeah, they're big scenes.
They're big scenes because he made the big scenes.
He did.
He had the prosthetics and stuff on his side, to be fair, but he was great in that. That's one of my favorite Tom Cruise roles.
Single-handedly revitalized his career.
Yeah,
if you really did. Like, hey, I'm willing to make fun of myself.
Yeah, that was. I'm willing to humble myself.
I'm willing to be goofy in a fat suit.
Yeah.
So
after the
can I come back,
jump,
please? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if this movie took place in the 70s or something, and Flugelman could make a phone call, it would have been the same deal.
Well, speaking of Flugelman, we also haven't talked about the economics of this, how the guys are basically working for room and board, which is pretty astonishing too in itself.
Yeah,
I feel like that's how the studio system worked in the 30s.
You might be right. Yeah,
back in the day. Yeah,
I mean,
I don't know how standard that was, but for studios to own actors was not. Not unheard of.
I mean, pre 1960, the residual system was a mess. So
that's like every production company that has a deal with a studio and has offices on the lot. Odds are it's in a bungalow that Lucky Day used to live in.
Yeah, but I do like the line where Chevy's like, "I would like to continue to work for free, please."
Right.
And you could kiss me on the veranda.
Lips would be fine.
We can talk about the end real quick before we move on, because I do think the ending is it sticks a landing in a real way, in that it continues to. It continues the fact that he gives the kid his watch. Yeah. Because, by the way, can I have your watch when you are dead?
Wait, that's another line I wrote down. That was so
Perfect.
Good.
What did he say? And then he gives the kid his watch, and then Steve Martin telling Carmen, "I'll come back for you one day."
And
why?
Why?
It's so good.
Also,
and that's another sort of full circle thing, because we talked about it in the beginning. Like, it's not that Carmen's dumb; it's just that this is like she's unfamiliar with film, and like it's this. But then there's this moment of just like, no, she also doesn't get it, which is pretty great. And then the woman that we haven't seen at all in the movie shows up to kiss Ned, and that's where Martin Short, a little bit of Martin Short sleaze shows up, because he's got that like kind of swagger as he leans into the kiss.
I will say that woman, when I was like looking up the cast for this, she's credited as Hot Senorita, which is great.
That's about right.
That's an 80s credit.
One. I play Hot Senorita. I'm here to read for the role of Hot Senorita.
Number 2.
But I also did so like the ending is kind of my least favorite part, where I had the least giggles on my giggle meter. But there still were, like, the whole speech about like shyness might be your El Guapo, lack of education might be your El Guapo.
For us, El Guapo is a big scary guy who wants to kill us, who also happens to be the actual El Guapo. Yeah.
Then you also get one last like El Guapo chill moment where he's like, "That was a good trick," and then shoots Lucky in the foot.
I mean, El Guapo he's such a good. I will say, being a villain in a comedy is tricky. Right. Like being a bad guy in a comedy it's a narrow gap to shoot, right? Because like you got to be easygoing enough to be funny. And you also have to be threatening enough to be a real
Credible.
Yeah, exactly. To be credible. So it's the fact that he pulled that off. So, I mean, half of the lines that I love from this movie are El Guapos.
Yeah.
You know, like it's so, he came out of this movie opposite Steve Martin, Martin Short, Chevy Chase, like three guys that are at the top of their comedy game in the 80s as just as memorable a part of the film as any of those three guys, if not more. I mean, cut to, me on Christmas morning waiting for somebody to unwrap their sweater so I can... It's a sweater!
The sweater moment is
Which, by the way, I found that sweater. Like, you can get it on Etsy, but it's like $300. It's the one I
Oh,
found.
come on. You can make
The
that
joke
sweater.
is not worth that. Like, it's also not worth me learning how to crochet or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Well, also, like, even the moment where they give him the sweater is kind of sweet because it's like, oh,
And then
we
it
all
cuts back to
banded
them, and
together.
they're like, so
He's like,
good.
I couldn't ask for a better guy.
Yeah. God, it's incredible.
But he has moments where he's threatening. Like you have the whole moment where he's like, I haven't had sex with Carmen yet because I have to wait for her rose to bloom.
The plethora scene.
Yeah, the plethora scene.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, wait, she doesn't do it tonight, I'll kill her. And they all giggle. Like, yeah. So he's like, he's still a villain.
And that's the other thing about that scene that I realized watching it last night. I haven't watched it in a little while. And then that scene where, he's giving Hefe a hard time about the plethora. Like, I wouldn't like to think that you would tell me I've got a plethora when you don't know what a plethora is. And Hefe's like, I feel like you're taking something else out on me. And he's like, could it be that you're turning 40 today? And I was like, oh, Jesus. El Guapo's turning 40. Like, El Guapo's younger than me. Like, when did that happen? That was a new experience for me watching Three Amigos last night.
But I also did like that moment, though, him just being like, it was a very like therapy,
Yeah.
like elevated moment. I'm just like, I think you're projecting a little bit.
Maybe that Carmen chooses to sleep in her cell instead of with you. God, I love this movie. Anything else we need to
really
talk about before we move on?
I'm trying to think if we met. I think we got all the lines.
I mean, listen, I think the best thing we can do is tell everybody, if you haven't seen the Three Amigos in a little while, go ahead and watch it again.
If you haven't seen it at all, like me,
It's
watch it.
It's 100 solid minutes. Wonderfully solid minutes.
when they come up with the scheme to sew, and I think it's Chevy who's like, "Oh, you can sew. If only we had known that before, we would have avoided all of this."
The Amigos thing.
Yeah.
I love that they used a plot from one of their older movies.
Well, also that's the other thing that they always hint is like at the like Amigos cinematic universe in this, and I'm like, that's a whole. You could really dig into that if you wanted to. You shouldn't, I think, but like you could.
You could. We don't
But
need to.
they didn't. I mean, it's just a good play, right? Because like what they functionally were like the Three Stooges, like that vibe, right? So it was like one of the shorts that would play before the feature film.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were. I mean, I think it was more Zorro than
Do you
Three
think that-
Stooges.
I didn't get that vibe. I didn't get the vibe that they were feature film stars.
I think they were. I mean, they had a big billboard there at
Yeah.
Goldsmith
Three Stooges
Pictures.
had billboards.
Well, in the one
Three Stooges
German,
had feature films
No,
too.
they didn't.
Yeah, they did.
Did
We'll check. We'll check into that.
I'm checking this right
We'll
now.
decide whether or not to cut
continue
this
your
section out later.
Continue your conversation.
but and then you have this whole other cinematic universe of like Ned being a child star. That's really interesting.
Little Nettie
yeah.
Knickers.
Yeah,
Yep.
adorable.
Yeah. And I love too that like the fact that they're movie stars continues to play into the movie. Like, it's sort of, they're stuck. You can they're painted into a corner, but then here comes the fact that they're movie stars to save the day when the German guy's like, I know who this man is. It's my favorite star of the silver screen. And so that becomes their way out. And then flying the Tubman 601 is another thing. Well, my stunt double did it, but I did.
And not to be too much of a nerd about it, like watching this movie, it made me like want to play like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign where it's all bards and you can't fight at all. You all just you have to like talk yourself out of everything. That is this movie.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, for sure.
So there was a single Three Stooges feature film.
Okay.
And it only had Mo, Larry, and Shemp.
So depending on who you ask, it wasn't a real Three Stooges film.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Curly,
Fair enough.
the best stooge. was never in a feature film
Got
of
it.
the Three Stooges.
Okay.
Actually surprising.
Fair enough.
Well, no, I mean, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's like why Looney Tunes were so big too. Like shorts were actually a thing,
It's amazing how it all comes back to shorts.
right? Because like Batman, Superman, they all had
Yeah.
short serials before features and stuff like that. That's like what they did in the 30s.
Yeah.
You get a little,
Show up for the cartoon.
you add another penny to the ticket price.
Right. All right. I think we can move on. Let's talk about movie lists.
Ooh.
So, in my research, there's not a single movie list that I can find that we've mentioned Three Amigos.
Like, that's awesome.
Not one single. Odds are there's been honorable mentions. I know that I've cut clips of Three Amigos in as B-roll from time to time. I'm sure there's been mention, but this episode, just by clicking on this video or this podcast, you've now participated in more Three Amigos discussion on this in the entire 10 plus year history of Cinefix, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
We did it. So we finally got around to talking about Three Amigos for like an hour and a half.
Which may be longer than they talked about
But
making it.
yeah, exactly. It's longer than the runtime of this
Yeah,
movie
yeah.
now. So
Yeah,
He
they
also
are
wants
all
to-
with the wrong curly.
okay. So the fact that we've never mentioned it on a movie list, do you guys want to put it on any movie lists ever? Comedies
Gosh.
would be the obvious one.
I don't.
Western comedies.
Western comedies.
Western comedies starring Chevy Chase.
Would this be in? I mean, it's not a. I mean, this is not a remake of Seven Samurai.
No.
It's a borrows heavily from.
homage.
It's an homage.
Well, is it
Top
a
10
spoof?
heavy homages.
Yeah.
Homage. It's like a cheese.
We never did decide if it was. A spoof. I think you guys decided it's not a spoof.
No, I think it is a spoof.
You think it is a spoof?
Yeah, I think there's enough Western to it to make it a spoof.
Well, there's enough Western to it, but there's also enough absurdity to it.
Yeah.
And there's enough like putting your finger on Western tropes that I think makes it. I think it makes it at least half a. If it's only half of a spoof, it's that other half that's keeping its foot in the real world.
Well, and they still have their heroic moment too. Like they have their redemption arc. Like it still kind of has the through line of a Western.
Right?
It's a spoof.
Is it a spoof?
Sure. Yeah, no,
Cal abstains courteously.
It's like I'm done. talking.
I agree. I mean, because like at the end of the day, like I guess like a spoof is just like self-conscious awareness in the absurd, right?
Right.
So
like
it has
it's
an
aware of the rules that it's breaking.
I mean, literally, they make a Western in the beginning of the movie. So, like, I don't think you have a scene where a fake Western is produced and not be aware of the genre
Right.
as all.
Yeah. Spoof. I think it's just barely in there, but it's in there.
Yeah.
Makes the cut.
Yeah.
Do we have a spoof list?
I want to say
If we do, it doesn't have Three Amigos.
it doesn't have
Right,
to yeah. I think that's the surest answer
Yeah.
that we don't have a spoof list because Three Amigos has not ended up on a movie list anywhere that I
So,
can find.
how many years have you been making lists on the Cinefix?
Lots.
Lots. This is
few.
this is
A
the
plethora.
first time.
Here we go.
This is the first time the Three Amigos.
This is the most we've ever talked about Three Amigos on the
See,
channel.
You don't say.
Easily.
You don't say.
Take it easy. Take it easy.
Down.
Sometimes even I get outvoted.
You don't say.
Oh, great! Real bullets!
I'll keep this.
You're in a lot of trouble, mister.
Okay. How about some Torf? We got time for Torf?
We've gone through a few.
Have we blown some
haven't
Torfs?
burned. We haven't burned through them all.
Okay.
I still have some Torfs in the tank. So let's go through them. Okay, true or false? Torf. Steve Martin originally planned to star in a musical adaptation of his screenplay idea, his songs written by Lorne Michaels and Randy Newman. However, due to scheduling conflicts and creative differences, the project was eventually shelved, and the screenplay was turned into a non-musical film instead. True or false?
That feels like true.
Yeah, I'll agree with Clint there.
I think at this because I know it was in development for a little while, and back in the 70s he would have been like live stadium tour kind of guy. So like I think he would have leaned into that. Yeah, true.
False.
Oh, no.
But I don't feel good about it.
Oh, is it a half falsy?
I don't know. Okay, so here's the answer. According to Steve Martin, he originally hired 2 writers to turn his idea into a screenplay, but it quote unquote didn't work out. It was then written by the help of Lorne Michaels and Randy Newman. The pair decided to throw the existing script away and start fresh, along with Newman, who Michaels invited because he wanted some music in it, and also because Randy's one of the funniest people I know, which is cute. Newman penned several songs for the film, including My Little Buttercup. So it's like it's
okay. So it wasn't supposed to be a musical to be
right.
It's always supposed to have music in it.
Yeah,
which is why Randy Newman was there.
That's the true part or false part.
Yeah,
like I said,
I think it's false. It wasn't ever supposed to be a musical.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All right. We went through that.
0 for 1.
All right, Torf. At the tender age of 10. Steve Martin started working at Disneyland. He worked his way up to Frontierland, and by the time he was a teenager, he had learned to lasso. Hence the short film.
100% true.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true. That's one that I stumbled across.
Yeah. He said so in a D23 interview describing his early comedy influences.
There's also a documentary about Steve Martin. It was called Seriously Funny. And they did it, I think it was like a Comedy Central special or something like that they did 25 years ago or something. They talked a lot about that. But like I knew he worked at Disneyland for a long time because he grew up right next to it, I think. But
yeah, it kind of makes sense. Like, I don't know. I get it. Torf. Martin used his dog's name for the invisible swordsman chant. True or false?
Let's
I'm
see.
gonna go true.
His dog's name was Farley?
Yeah, he's a Farley. Yeah.
Farley, Huffar. Sure, true. Yeah, Farley. His dog's name was Farley.
That's true, which I think is very cute.
Yeah.
No, I mean, listen, Chewbacca's based off of a Malamute, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody, I mean, it's sitting there writing and be like, I need a name for the, oh, look, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We named the dog Indiana.
We named the dog Indiana.
All right, I think this is my last Torf that we haven't gone through.
Okay.
Yeah, we went through a lot of them. In the Three Amigos silent movie sequences, Martin, Short, and Chase wear authentic lead-based makeup. True or false?
Yeah, true.
False? Do they really need to use lead?
Or lead-based? I'm going to go true. Why not? It was the 80s.
That's true, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Along with the use of lead-based makeup, the silent sequences were shot in a vintage Western filming location to add authenticity.
I see. This is why I think it's a spoof.
That's what I'm saying.
My rule of spoofs is you gotta know, you gotta do the thing that you're making fun of too.
Yeah.
Oh, one last thing.
Yep.
So the Three Stooges were in feature films, but
This is the real Torf.
but they were not in Three Stooges feature films. So they were merely, the Three Stooges would have been characters in other feature films. But like the franchise of the Three Stooges,
I feel like we're splitting hairs
I
here.
agree, did not become a feature film franchise until
I think this all started because
1960s.
we were like, did the Three Stooges have billboards? And that's something that we cannot confirm or deny.
I think, all right. Three
Listen,
Stooges.
I'm less concerned about that. Let's move on to that was the end of the Torf?
That was end.
Great.
We went through half of them.
Yeah, we
Talking
talked a lot about
Yeah.
there was probably some
There was like
Landis
the Twilight
struggles of
Zone
the 80s.
thing.
Yeah. Who's your MVP?
Oh, I didn't think. Oh,
Martin Short.
yeah.
Martin Short? You think?
Absolutely. Because I think he was just like the least known. And like he held his own with what at the time were 2 comedy titans and a director that has more than established himself at the top of his game. Because again, this isn't the best Steve Martin movie. This isn't the best Chevy Chase movie. This isn't the best John Landis movie. It's definitely not the best Martin Short movie either. However, it is one of the earliest Martin Short movies.
Yeah.
And it's just
I'll give him top rookie for that. But I got to give it to Steve Martin.
Okay.
Because he wrote it. I think he carried the movie. I think Steve Martin is like, he's so good at being funny in a complimentary way, right? He's so good at being funny around other really funny people. And so like these ensemble casts that he's a part of, and you know, he's talking about Bowfinger later, like him and Eddie Murphy are like, Eddie Murphy's doing some like bizarre shtick.
KIT, keep it together.
Yeah, but then Steve Martin is like, he's a straight man that's also being funny, which is not a easy thing to do, you know. So I think he keeps the whole thing afloat. Part of me wants to give it to El Guapo because of what we talked about earlier about how hard it is to be a a villain in a comedy. And he's just so fun and charming. But I think it's Steve Martin. The fact that Steve Martin co-wrote the movie also, and that he was like he was the one that got it made. I'm gonna give it to him.
I would agree with Steve Martin, and as much as I like Martin Short, I think of the three amigos, he's maybe the one who made me like actually laugh out loud the least. Like Steve Martin got a lot of laughs out of me, Chevy got a lot of laughs out of me, and also like you said, Steve Martin wrote it, so I give it to Steve Martin.
Steve Martin.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Incorrect.
Marty Short. Launch me.
Okay. Launch me. All right. Well, that brings us right near to the end of the episode. So, Cal, do we have time for one more?
Of course we do.
Okay.
What kind of question is that?
A legitimate one, I think.
guess
Do we have
so.
time for one more?
Yeah,
one
we
more,
do. So the year is 1986. Nicolas Cage is slowly beginning his ascent to Hollywood stardom. I actually think he's still Nicolas Coppola at this moment in time.
Is he still Nicolas Coppola in the background of Fast Times at Ridgemont High?
Well, that would have been like 81, right?
Yeah, something like that.
He's close. If not, it's in the transition period. Anyway, who would Nicolas Cage be in The Three Amigos if they remade it today, or if at the time Nicolas Cage was in this movie?
Peggy Sue Got Married was 86.
Yeah.
So he was
Cage.
Yeah, he was Cage. But I swap him in for Chevy Chase. Nicolas Cage is Dusty Bottoms.
He'd be good.
I think imagine how dumb Dusty Bottoms is.
Yeah.
But then you layer some crazy and some anger on top of it. And all of a sudden you're having to tiptoe around Dusty a little bit.
Yeah.
Like he's like a weird stick of dynamite that you just kind of have to like, oh, okay.
But I feel like that's more Lucky, though. I feel like Lucky is more kind of like he could be the kind of darker character.
Oh no! See, I think I don't want that to be quite so front and center as Lucky. Like that sort of energy off to the side, as it being Dusty Bottoms, I think would be.
He'd be
a
good.
lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't think I want him in this movie, Nick.
Too bad. You got to put him somewhere.
I know.
Defeats the purpose of the game
Steve,
here.
I hate to say it, but Steve Martin is where I would put him in the Lucky spot. But I don't like it. I don't feel good about it.
I don't like it either.
Yeah.
Kick him off to the side.
I don't know if I like him as Chevy, though. I really think Chevy works in this in a way that surprised me.
I think it's a good spot for Chevy to excel. Like he was put in the right place.
He does the dumb, lovable idiot really well in this.
Yeah.
Again, Nicolas Cage can play a dumb, lovable idiot.
He can. But I'm going to stick with it even though I don't like it.
Okay. Well, it's 2 against 1, so we're gonna put him in Dusty Bottoms when we go back in time and mess with everything.
Great! You've killed the invisible swordsman!
So, where indeed does this movie rank?
I won.
I think it's clear where I placed it.
I can't imagine it showed up on your list as you watched it for the first time.
I mean,
last night.
if I could go back in time, I don't know. But yeah.
Cal,
Be real. If you can even.
I don't know. I really liked it,
like
though.
Last week we
Remember,
talked about,
that's the community.
Week we talked about Seven Samurai, and I will sit here and say, for the first time in the podcast, I was like, I fucked up by not putting that one on my list.
I will say.
Are you gonna?
No.
Are you,
I don't. Here's my thing. When we were talking about I also have a Three Amigos on my list. I think I have a lot of Three Amigos on my list.
a lot of movies that you just love.
A lot of and a lot of stupid comedies too. Like I really
Yeah.
like a stupid comedy, hence why I like Three Amigos. So I don't know if I have room on my list for another stupid comedy.
Got it. Okay.
This stupid comedy. You don't know if you have room on your
Well, I
list.
didn't go-
for
like, I didn't-
this
I didn't have, like, a-
stupid comedy.
we know it's on your dad's list,
Oh, it's on my dad's
but
list.
it's not on yours.
No.
Yeah. I had it at number 55,
Okay.
right in the middle. Dan,
Where'd Dan have it?
let's see.
I know
Dan,
this,
Gotta be on
this is
Dan's
a Dan
list.
movie
this
that's
is another thing. It makes me feel-
Wait. Before you say, for Dan, over
What do you
under
think it's
top over 35 or under 35?
35. I thought you were gonna say 50.
I think it's under 35.
No, I think it's between 35
so
and
under
50.
35, and then he had it ranked 1 through 34.
He had it at 35 or lower.
35 or lower.
I think I'm learning Dan's taste, and I do believe I think this is fairly high. I think between 35 and 50.
okay. 59.
Oh.
Yeah, Durango lower than I did.
Wow.
But in the same ballpark, which once again I feel really terrible about. I don't like being in that ballpark with Dan.
Nobody does.
Nobody does.
So where does that put it?
But let's find out. So me having it at 59, Dan having it at 59. 66.
All right.
That makes
Three
sense.
Amigos, number 66.
It's a shame that there wasn't a third sixth there.
So
It's demonic.
now let's go back to the season 2 Community. Like, we didn't even bother talking about this with Seven Samurai last
Yeah.
week. Do we want to
Unimpeachable
invoke
film.
the Community?
We'll talk about that more. So,
So
what
here's the deal. So now we get a shot. If we all three agree as a community unanimously that we want to boot the Three Amigos off of our top 100, we can. We have to decide that, and then we get to open the envelope and pick one of. I'm told there are, I think, 3 movies in here. So films to be considered for top 100 in place of a struck film. So if we strike this film, we'll open this envelope and pick from the 3 movies that are in here to replace it.
So we get to pat
number
So we get to
66?
see all 3 of the movies in there,
Correct. And then
where
we'll get
it's
to,
not us pulling in and then whatever one you pull out.
I don't know if somebody
I mean, listen, if you're going to show me a mystery box and ask me if I want the Three Amigos or the mystery box,
should we do that? Should we, I mean, let's decide right now. Like, Dan's of course
the
not
Three
here,
the Three Amigos is the Three Amigos, but the box could be anything.
the box could be anything. So do you want to do it that way? Do we want to decide that we want to? Because listen, I think I will forever love the conversation about favorite versus best.
Yeah.
Right? Because they serve 2 very different functions as a film fan and as somebody that loves movies. So like, I would be willing to reconsider it being on top 100.
No.
I love this movie so dearly, but if we want to,
There could be any. There could be any. There could be
I mean,
anything.
listen, here's the thing.
There could be anything
This is
now.
why I can't wait to actually redo this list sometime because, like, I think we talked about it before. We might have even talked about it last week in terms of like the camps that movies fall into. There's like the unimpeachable Mount Rushmore movies that like
Seven
you
Samurai.
have to Seven Samurai type things. There's movies that you just think are really, really outstanding and good and of like a superior quality. And then there's movies that you just love for reasons that maybe you can't
For
quite
reasons,
explain.
period. Yeah.
And I started this episode saying very, very eyes wide open about this is a movie
This is a for reasons
that I love this movie with my heart. So
How do you know that you don't love any of the 3 movies in that
I
envelope
don't,
with your
and
heart?
this is why I will continue to hate Dan until I die.
He's the worst for this
He's
because I'm
terrible.
really, yeah. Like,
Do you know what?
Cal, I imagine where you're going to vote.
Yeah, you know where I vote.
You wanna out.
I vote for the mystery box.
Okay. And if we do this, if we decide that we're going to,
There's no going back.
If we decide we're going to strike it, we're just going to reach in and pick one at random. We're not.
No. I think we should debate.
You wanna
this
pick
is
all
a,
three?
this is it. Like, no one. If someone made it this far in the episode, they don't want to see. They don't want to see
a random shit?
Yeah, they don't
Yeah,
want
okay.
just a random.
All right, fair
entry.
enough. Alex,
I've not only been thinking about this the whole episode, but the entire day. Because, and this is why I hate Dan right
this
now.
is coming.
Because so in the debate about favorite versus best, I like having like a weird wild card on the list. Like, it's just something that like you and Dan love. Like, and I ended up really loving when I watched it for the first time for this episode.
It sounds like you have a couple of those on your list as well.
I have
so-
more. I have a lot, and I'm sure we might want to strike them. But like, I really want to know what's in there. Like, out of
We
curiosity.
can't find out until we make this
know.
decision. If you really want to know what's in
So
it,
you're voting strike. You're both voting.
I
strike.
can vote for strike. I would be fine voting.
But you
for strike.
can, but
because
you
like
want to.
ultimately, like I get it. Three Amiga in terms of, and I guess it depends on what we want to do. Here's our little bit of power over the algorithm, right? Like what kind of list do we want
This is
to
our
I like the power.
ability to
It's
review
starting-
Dan.
It's starting to become our list if we get to do this. And so like, do we want those soft spot movies that frankly like aren't soft spots for you guys, but it's just for me? And so like, I get it. Like if we want to take another shot at adding one of those unimpeachably good movies.
All I'm trying to say is, you and I had to have to do an episode on the episode of The Fly, and I had to fucking sit here and eat shit because the fucking Fly didn't make the top 100 because I chose Videodrome.
right.
But you and fucking Dan collude over the 2 amigos collude over 3 friends.
I understand that.
And I have to sit here. and look at a mystery box and be denied the satisfaction of knowing what's in it.
I understand that, which is why I'm willing
Yeah.
to go along with you and strike Three Amigos.
Do you want to though?
I mean, when has that ever? I'm a father of two. What I want does not matter, and it hasn't for some time.
I also like it's hard because I also really ended up liking Three Amigos a lot.
Is it
great.
on your list?
Yeah.
And
It's not on my list.
and pulling it off of the top 100 does not change the fact that you are very
I-
much allowed to love Three Amigos.
But like it feels like it does. Like, fine, I'll vote strike.
Okay.
I really want to know what's in there.
All right, here we
All
go.
right. We're gonna strike it.
Oh,
gone.
oh,
I hope you're happy, Dan.
This is diabolical.
Goddamn happy.
This was the making of your own demise. All right, what do we got in here?
Let's see. Do you want me to? There's like stuff in here.
What's in there? Just pull it out.
Trying not to. I want to pull the most interesting thing out of here. Oh, they're all paper clipped together.
Oh, they stuck
Let me see if I
together
can
with
get rid
gum.
of this paper clip out of here. All right, so I'm just pulling this out.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, the movie that we're
Wait,
going
I thought
to.
there was 3 movies in there.
There are 3. Oh, we want to
Yeah,
debate.
we want to
That's
debate.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That-
Okay.
are there pictures? Oh yes! Oh my god!
First up, bring it on.
Come
Okay.
on! Come on!
See, I think you're happy. Open the box.
Yeah.
Second up, Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Ooh,
We also have The Sting.
not a
choose from?
comedy on these levels, but you know, I'm a fan.
Oh, there's.
There's
and
4.
Another Kurosawa.
Oh.
Ikiru.
Okay.
So we have 4 to choose from. Which one do we want to? And now, like I think the deal is maybe we get to give one of these movies an option to stay on the list. Maybe.
Yeah.
Oh,
is
like
it- is
to
it
go
just-
back in the box.
Yeah, it's just going
you
to
got-
go in place of Three Amigos at number 66.
Dan is telling me that I just get to pick one.
You just get to pick one. It's just you
Yeah.
as a community. All right, which one do we want to put in favor of Three Amigos?
I will say that Roger Ebert called Bring It On the Citizen Kane of cheerleading movies. So just
Sure.
keep that in mind. Oh God, there's some good ones. I feel less bad about the choice now because there's some good ones in there.
Okay, so
I'm least passionate about the Sting.
Oh, really? Not
Yeah.
Ikiru?
No, I like Akuru.
All right.
I would talk about Akuru. I don't think it's on my list.
maybe we
but
just did Kurosawa though, so it goes
Yeah.
against your whole thing of only one director.
It does.
Only one movie per.
I think we're all leaning to
I
Bring It
don't
On.
know if I have George. I do have a different George. That Sting video, that Sting picture is there probably because of me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's a good movie.
it is good. It's not on my list, but it's good.
Robert Redford and Paul Newman just being sleazy and awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a crime movie.
You know what? I'll say that Bring It On is one of my Three Amigos.
That's what I was going to guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing, real quick sidebar that I love about doing this show is that like we can already immediately tell. Bring it on. Oh yeah. No.
Yeah, was that going to be Dan?
The Sting. Yeah, that's probably Cal.
Yeah. I think
So
Monty
who-
Python could be on a few lists.
Is that you or is that Dan?
I'm pretty sure I have Monty Python on my
That's
list.
a Dan.
It
Though.
would,
I feel like that's
I would
don't
be
know.
very
I would-
comfortable having it on my list. And then Ikiru.
How are you supposed to agree on this?
I've never seen
Okay,
Ikiru,
so,
so that one is already out.
here's-
That could be fun for you, though.
Here's what I'm gonna let's start making some decisions. I'm gonna put Bring It On down.
Down for what?
You're gonna
Because-
bring it on down.
I'm gonna bring it on down.
You're gonna bring it on down.
Because I feel like it's just another Three Amigos waiting to happen.
Okay. Well, no, but I liked Three Amigos.
For now, keep in mind.
Not an argument against it.
Well, just in terms of we're just going to wind up right back here.
Oh, yeah,
pick
yeah,
out of an
fair
envelope
enough.
because it's a love it movie.
Why don't we pick 2 and go from there?
Okay,
And then that'll like bring them down because then that'll at least remove 2.
great.
Okay.
So I think removing Bring It On,
Fine.
and then I honestly like I'm gonna go ahead and remove Ikiru
I'm down with that.
because we just talked about
Yeah.
Kurosawa. It's a great movie.
I'm sure it's a fine film, but it's not.
You could talk about it later, though.
Is that on your list?
Here's
Is that-
why.
is
I don't think it's on my list. I think I only had one Kurosawa.
I've got 3 other Kurosawa films that I'd put
Maybe that's Dan. It must be
on my
Dan.
list. It's got to be Dan. Okay, so if we all assume that it's Dan, it's definitely
Okay.
out here.
It's out.
I'm very sorry to the Ikiru
Very
fans
sorry,
out there.
Kurosawa.
It's a wonderful film.
Yeah.
But we've just covered Kurosawa, and
Jimmy's
if we're gonna do another one, I'd
that
rather
hurt
it be
Jamie?
High and Low.
Oh, High and Low was good.
The Sting or Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
I'm going to vote Monty Python.
You know I'm going the Sting.
You know you're going
You're the tiebreaker.
to me.
Yeah.
This is why I always like to vote first.
Listen, if you want to
That's
go,
why I just
if you
yelled
want to
one.
go Monty Python and the Holy Grail, I won't be mad. It's a It's just not as cool as The Sting.
We've discussed a few.
It's just
cool
not as cool as The Sting.
It is funnier. I will admit that. And if we want to have the position, we want to reserve number 66 for a comedy. Because I agree.
We just replace one comedy with another.
Yeah, because I agree. Like I had to when I made my list, I was like, man, I'm not this dour of an individual. And I made sure to cut like 10 and I cut 15 movies to replace them with comedies.
It's like, let me just get Irreversible out of there so I can.
Reversible.
Yeah. Like Gasparino got cut for sure.
Right.
For sure.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, let's keep number 66. Keep 66 funny.
Okay, you know what? I feel good about this.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Okay.
So Three Amigos, I'm very sorry.
Goodbye.
We're going with Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Dan, you son of a bitch. I hope you're happy wherever you are. If you're still on vacation or what, I don't know. When was the last time you guys heard from Dan? It's been like weeks, right?
I don't know. He's been furiously slacking me. Not Three Stooges movies.
The Three Stooges related stuff. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. It became a not top 100.
Not 100.
The Three Amigos, turns out,
was 100.
It went from, I do feel very much like the AFI at this point, booting something from 66 to unranked.
Yeah.
66 isn't like low either.
No. It's not like it just barely made the cut. But Monty Python is going to end up on the list at number 66, and I don't feel bad about that.
I feel good about that.
I feel all right about that. But
I feel better about that.
I know you do. Just give me a minute to deal with it. All right. Well, thank you very much for watching. Thank you guys for talking about Three Amigos with me. It's a movie that means quite a bit to me, and I know it was a chore for some of us to talk about it for 90 minutes. But here we go. And then thank you, of course, to our producer Tayo Yakin and our 3D printer Tayo. Excellent work there. And once again, I am taking those home with me. Jamie Parslow set up all these cameras and lights, so we might as well say thank you to him too. But really, it's just Mariah Franzen's the only one of us that matters, our technical producer. So thank you to her. And what is it? Doug? Who is it? Is there somebody else I'm supposed to thank?
Doug?
No, there's nobody else. I can't imagine there's anybody else. But tune in next week as our community season continues, where we will be going to a galaxy far, far away to watch Star Wars. Is that on anybody's list?
I don't even know what that is.
I don't even know.
Here's some money. Go see a Star Wars.
Go see a Star Wars. See if I care. All right. Thank you again, everybody. Stay safe. Be good. We'll see you next week.